Sam. So I had one of the viewers who requested for a short video regarding the different types of turrets that's available in the game, and explaining a little bit briefly about what can be used and what is to be used when and things like that. So I'm going to go very briefly and explain a few things. I'm not going to go into too many details. So I have one of each type on here, the different types of turrets and also the artillery weapons here, just to briefly go through it. So initially, obviously, we would start with your MG turret or the machine gun turret. So that's your primary weapon that you normally would start off with early on in the game, and it's extremely effective, especially in the early parts, because that would do the bulk of the damage in terms of targeting enemies, and it's got a very high rate of fire. If I go into adjust mode or the config mode on top and I click on a particular component, then it would give me a few more details. So it shows me the health of the turret itself. So it's got a health of 400 for the MG, and the round capacity, what it can hold. So in terms of the round capacity for all the turrets, irrespective, right from your MG all the way up to your Hellfire and Exterminator, the max capacity is 1,000 rounds at a time. So that is what would be for all the turrets, irrespective of what type of turret it is, including your smart mortars or the small pyro and creo turrets as well. So the 1,000 is all across the board. In terms of the rate of fire, each one will have differences in that, and also the range at which it can fire. So when you come to that, if I go into configure turret here, it gives me a few more details regarding the different aspects. So the MG turret, for example, has a max range of 5,000. Now this 5,000, there is no unit defined for that 5,000, is it measured in terms of meters or yards or whatever. Nothing has been mentioned. So one way to find out how far it can actually target enemies is, once you're in game, if you go into command mode and you click on a particular turret, you would see a sort of a circle, if I may call it that, which shows you the exact range of how far it can actually target enemies. So once you see that circle, everything within that circle, every time an enemy enters that circle, that turret should be able to target that enemy. So that's another way to find out how far the range actually is. I mean, this is just a numerical value, but in command mode it will show you like a visual kind of representation of how far it can actually target, as in each turret can actually target up to. So that's one way to find out. So just to illustrate, I've gone into one of the nodes just to show about the range that you can check of each of the turrets. I've taken that same dummy base that I was explaining in the video. So we first go into command mode, and well, there's one of two ways actually. If you can hover over a particular turret, if you see that little red circle that's kind of shown there, that is the range of that turret. So this one currently is for the pyro turret, so as I mentioned also, it's very limited range on that. So if I change over to that one, see that circle has gone up a lot more. I mean, you can't see it from there. Let me just go up a bit. Let me go zoom out. So for example, if you see that circle, I don't know if it's very visible, but this is for the CIWS. You'll see the red circle that's shown on the side here. You can see it on the left hand side a bit clearly over the rocks. That is the range for that particular turret. So this is for the type 30, and that was for your regular CIWS. Now this is different, because if I go onto this one and I go into config here, this is range at 6,000. So if I set it to lower, something like that. And now if I go onto it, you see where the circle has come in a lot closer. So that is how you can check the actual range at which this particular turret can target enemies, is this red circle. If you can see the mouse pointer, that circle that goes all around, that is the range. So every time the enemy enters that range, this particular turret should be able to target it in a 360-degree view, depending on other components placed around it and so on. So if I go on to the Hellfires here, if you notice that circle with the mouse pointer, I can show you, is way out here, as you can see. So the circle, because it's 12,000 range, so that's how far away, even if there was enemy here in this region here, it would still be able to target it. That circle is pretty much coming up to there and going all the way around, out of view there. On the sides I can't really show you because it's gone beyond this view that it's allowing me. Okay, if I go up here, you can see there's bits and portions of that same range circle up on this hill here. So that is the way that you can actually find out the range. I mean, the big guns, I mean, it would probably, I won't even be able to see it since it's 150,000 max range, so I won't even be able to see the circle. But that's just to give you an idea of how far away. And of course that range, even for the Hellfires, if I go here now, like I had shown on the top left hand corner, that is the range, the little red circle. But if I go into config and I bring this down to say maybe 5,000, just to show you, 5,000 is actually the minimum, so we'll go somewhere in between, say 8. So 8,000, and I confirm and I come out. Now if you notice that the circle has changed and it's come up inside, all the way inside here. So every time, based on the range that it's set at, you can check how far away it should actually be able to target. So it gives you kind of an idea of, you know, like up to what range this particular gun will be able to find enemies and target enemies. Similarly for each of the guns. So this was just to show you how it's visually represented in game. And let's get back to the video. Small other things like your firing intervals. This is again going to differ from different turrets. This is pretty high in terms of firing rate, so it's got an extremely high rate of fire, 0.15 seconds every round, and an ammo cost of 2. The lock-on config part, that's a completely different section altogether, different topic that I probably might cover in some other video. I'm not going to go into that right now. Placement wise, again, there are differences for the different types of turrets. You will have a few, like for example these 5 here, for example, are all in the same range. They would take the same number of slots. Now when I'm talking slots is when you pick up a component, if you notice now there are those little blue dots that appear on top of the tiles. Those are what we refer to as slots. So every time you try and place a component, it needs to have a certain number of slots available for you to place it at any given place. So based on that, you would be able to place turrets there. And you know, if you want to do multiple, like if I have this, I can do that. I can even take it closer to there. So there is a difference in terms of how close together based on the slots that you have available in that particular area. So all of this is going to be different. These 5, for example, will all have the same range in terms of the slot formations. They would use the same amount of slots. Displacement wise, that again depends how you're building the base and how you want to place them. You can have multiples as well in the same area, like for example, if you want to place it on top of a ramp, so I can place one of these and I will still be able to fit maybe an MG in front of it like that, because there are sufficient slots available for me to place both of them next to each other like this. So the combinations, that's a thing of trial and error of sorts. Once you keep playing and you try out a few things, you can figure out ways of how you can place different components close to each other. Then again, you have to make sure that you keep in mind the range on each one and how far you want them to be able to target different types of enemies that come close to the base and things like that. So not going to go into too much details on that. Coming into the next type beyond the MG, you have another variant of the MG, which is your bottom MG as they call it. So this can basically be placed on the ceiling of sorts, so you need some sort of like a overhang area. These would ideally be placed somewhere on the external boundaries of the base, depending on the space available, and it's always got to be under some sort of overhang area. You cannot place other things on top of it. Like I cannot place an MG on top of it. It's going to collide. If you notice, it gives me that colliding with other component, so that entire tile gets taken up with that one placement, even though it's only using up 4 slots, but it doesn't allow you to place anything else on top of that. Not too widely used, but some people would use it on the exterior portions of the base, just as another kind of line of defense. Coming into the next one, we have your 30mm light gun. So again, this would be higher in terms of range but slower in terms of rate of fire. This is 5000 max range. This would be about 8000. And you have the next variant, which is your twin barrel 30mm. This range would go up even higher, up to 10,000, and the rate of fire would be the same as this. Only thing is, it can fire basically 2 rounds every time, so it's got 2 barrels, so 2 rounds every time. The next upgrade to that is your Viper, which would have a higher rate of fire compared to the twin barrel as well, and this would fire armor piercing rounds as well. These would just use pyro ammo. This one uses standard regular ammo. So there are a lot of things like this, small things, but you can check out each one if you go into adjust and then you click on a particular component. In here it shows you more detail, what type of rounds, and you know the stats regarding the health and the ammo and things like that. If you go into configure, it will give you the range and the firing intervals and things like that. So you can find out on your own basically if you just go through it, because I don't want to spend time more on explaining for each one. Coming to the next one, we have your CIWSs, which are again very high rate of fire and extremely effective in terms of close range. They do have quite a high range as well. It's about, I think, 12, or the Hellfires are 12, sorry. These ones have a range of 8000. That's your max range on the CIWSs. So we have 2 types. One is your regular CIWS, and you have something called the Type 30 CIWS. So the only difference in terms of both of these is one is slightly shorter, so you would be able to place this in certain places where something of this height might not fit. So that's the only difference between the 2 types. In terms of the firing intervals and all other things, it's exactly the same. The range is the same as well on those. Coming on to your main, the guns that, or the turret that everybody wants to have on their base, the famous Hellfire turrets. So again, extremely high rate of fire, extremely effective, if I may call them, in terms of taking down large groups of enemies, and it's got a range of 12,000. So as you can see, firing interval is 0.1 seconds. So extremely high rate of fire. Cost is slightly more, but they will chew through ammo very quickly. So you need to make sure that you have sufficient ammo generation and replenishment going on for them, because they will go through ammo very quickly. Again, in terms of slots, coming back to the slots, this take up a lot more space compared to your other CIWSs, for example. As you can see, it's taking up more space. So placement wise, again, you got to carefully plan where you want to place them. Coming on to the last one, which is the newest addition in a way to the game, is your exterminator. So this again, health of 1500, and it's got the same range as the Hellfire, which is 12,000. Cost wise, the interval, it's lower. Obviously it's firing 2 barrels, so 3 seconds between each shot. Ammo cost is also more, and this again is armor piercing rounds, and in addition it fires little micro missiles that you can see here. So it would first shoot the rounds, and then additionally you would have the missiles launched at that target as well. And coming up here, I don't really use these much because they have extremely low range. You have the Creo turret and the Pyro turret, two variants. One is the fire, one is the ice. The range on this is extremely low. As you can see, it's got just a max range of 1500. So normally you would have them somewhere on the outer edge, again on the bottom here, somewhere in the front, and they would only target the enemies that come in very close. So if you have on the higher levels the other turrets miss some enemies and they manage to get close, then you would have maybe towards the bottom level these kind of turrets, so that they can take care of those enemies that got through. Like I said, I don't use those much because of that extremely low range that they have. They are effective in terms of firing interval. It's 0.2 seconds, so high rate of fire. So one is basically like a flamethrower. The pyro one is like a flamethrower that you would normally have. Coming on to your smart mortars, this again, the placement is important. Needs to be out in an open area, because these would fire like little mortars or shells out of here, and it's got a pretty good range of about 10,000. Now in terms of placement, and I said is, if I go and place it somewhere here, then that's basically a waste, because even if it does target some enemy, it's going to be wasting ammo hitting the top of this or the bottom of this tile, for example. So you would always place this out on the upper levels and mostly in an open area, so it's got a clear field of view, especially since it's shooting the shells in the air, and then they would target the enemies and accordingly destroy them. That would cover the turrets in general. Coming on to your artillery, we start off with what's called the pre-war artillery. Now the turrets in general, like these three and your big guns here, all of them have a max range of 150,000. So the range will remain the same. The shot intervals will also be similar. They would fire one shell at a time. The pre-war can hold up to 3 shells. Then you have the next variant, which is your 105mm artillery. This can hold up to 5 shells at a time. And then you have the upgrade on that, which is the twin barrel 105mm artillery. This can hold 10 shells at a time. So if you go closer, you can see on the sides here, that is where it holds the rest of the shells. So these are the 3 different types. Then we come to the big guns. We have the 406 cruiser cannon. This can hold up to 12 shells. The range is still the same, 150,000. That's the max range. This is again armor piercing, and so it's got 3 barrels. So when you go into configure, every 5 seconds it's going to shoot one of those shells out. And we have another variant, which is your electromagnetic cruiser cannon. So it's a higher variant of your 406. This fires electro ammo. Again, it's armor piercing as well. So it's similar. Even when you look at it, looks very similar to this. It's just that it's firing a different kind of ammunition. and I think it's a bit more powerful compared to the 406. Range again is the same, the interval, everything else remains the same. And we also have the rocket array. Now this is, I still put it under artillery. This basically fires rockets. The range is similar to your Hellfire. It's got a range of 12,000. So it's not like your other big guns. Firing interval is a lot lesser, it's a lot faster, so it's quicker. It's got 15 of these barrels or chambers which would fire the rockets, so at a time it can hold up to 15 shells. The reloading on this is slightly different. It's not really actual shells, it has to be kind of manually reloaded using combination of your materials and powers and things like that. So it doesn't work like the other ones. You can't have like a auto loader or something close to it, because that's not going to be able to refill the ammo for this. This can either be done through command mode or manually going to the gun and refilling it using a combination of your material resources and the power. And I think that pretty much covers everything. Now in terms of the placements, again, like I mentioned, the slots make a difference to where you can place them and how close together. Normally you would have different combinations of the different types of turrets. So you would have combinations of your Hellfires, for example, along with maybe like your Vipers or the twin barrel artillery, things like that, so that you can have the Hellfires target certain enemies, and then you would have your twin barrel target another set of enemies. This is basically to minimize wastage of ammo, because if you have all of them set, for example, at the same range and targeting the enemies in the same order, then you would have multiple guns all firing at the same enemy, which is basically wasting ammo. So you're going to go through ammo a lot quicker. So the way to work around that is you set them at different range, so that you would have a different range for your twin barrel and you would have a different range for your Hellfire, so that it's more effective in terms of ammo utilization. Again, depends on preferences. There's a lot of people who argue that it doesn't really work that way, but I personally find that it does make a difference, and you're not unnecessarily targeting the same enemy, like multiple guns targeting the same enemy and shooting at it. But yeah, that again is individual preference. Other than that, I think I've pretty much covered it as briefly as I could. If you have any more questions, please do let me know in the comments. I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability. I will make another video probably regarding the range, how you can utilize range and the targeting priorities, as I call them. That will be a separate video that I will probably make soon. So I hope some of you found this useful in terms of what I managed to cover in this short video. And as I always request, please do like and subscribe to my channel. It would help me out. And that's it for this video. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, guys. Bye bye.